Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, that's good. You write children's books, I understand.
I do. I have written a series of children's chapter books, so sort of 8 to 12 age range, about life on our farm, narrated by the spiders that live in our chicken coop, our garden, our kitchen, and our barn.
Excellent. Well, before we get to those books, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what brought you to the point where you write books?
Yeah, so I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I work full time, and then this authoring and some of my other online entrepreneurial stuff is sort of a side hustle, I guess, if you want to call it that. And when I got pregnant with my first kid, it just kind of became more important to me in terms of growing food and understanding more about the types of food I'm putting in my body now that I was eating for 2. And so when we eventually moved to the Midwest, got a farm and started growing our own food, and realized that there's a lot of people that don't really understand what life on a farm is really like. Adults that, members of my family, other people that are very, wise to the ways of the world, but don't really understand, how chickens work and how a garden actually works. And so just kind of noticed, especially as my kids are getting older, how impactful it can be to learn about, get engaged with where food comes from and how it's grown as early in life as possible. So I decided to write a hopefully engaging series of children's books that talk about what life on the farm is really like. So the books are narrated by these spiders. Obviously, that's the sort of fictional part of the book, but the stories that they tell are actually true based on the animals on our farm. In fact, I didn't even change the animals' names because I couldn't come up with that many more new animal names. We had enough trouble naming them all in the first place. So it's all based on stuff that's really happened on our farm. Some of it sounds pretty crazy, but sometimes animals do crazy things. So the spiders kind of go through the year. So it's kind of seasonally based. Each book covers like 1 year in the life on our farm. And the spiders write letters to each other on the spider wide web, and they talk about how things work. And it's just designed to hopefully get kids who are interested in it, or kids who are in a position where they can't have any access to growing their own food, just learn more about it, understand that food doesn't come from a grocery store. People are out there growing it, raising it, harvesting it, processing it, transporting it, and then it arrives on their plate, and that whole process.
Sure. So what kind of farm do you have?
It's sort of a hobby farm. We don't sell a lot of the products to other people, but it's about 20 acres, and we have sheep. We had cows. We don't currently have cows, and chickens, and a very big garden.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I grew up in the suburbs, and we moved to the city. And then my father got this idea of buying a farm. 100 acres. I worked on it one summer. It was a lot of fun. And I dreamed of owning my own farm one day. I have a very large garden where I grow my own vegetables and herbs. So I'm right with you on that. But I don't have any chickens. I have no animals except a couple of dogs. So how many chickens have you got?
We have about a dozen. Yeah. I mean, the first book is about when we started our chicken flock. And so we started out with like 18, I think, and then we foolishly put them outside when there was an infestation of gnats, and like more than half of them died. And we were starting a laying flock was our idea. And of the chickens that we had left, we had I think like 8 chickens left, and 5 of them were boys. And we were like, how are we going to do a laying flock with 5 boy chickens? So we had to call the extra roosters before they killed each other. And so,
Right.
so it was a little tough, just the 4 chickens to start out with, but we've had, we went and got a couple more, and then we've had one chicken that's very broody, and she likes raising chicks. So we've had some chicks since then. So we're up to about a dozen at the moment.
So let's talk about the first book.
Yeah, so the first book is Tales from the Coop, and it opens with the idea that Charlie, the chicken coop spider, who her name is actually Charlotte, but she goes by Charlie, and she lived in the garden shed before we bought the property, and we moved the garden shed and turned it into a chicken coop relatively early on in our time here. And per the premise of the book, we moved the now chicken coop on top of our internet cable, which is loosely true. And she tells everyone in the beginning of the book, in the introduction, that spiders can communicate with all other spiders through vibrations in their web. They have the spider wide web. They're able to talk to spiders all over the world through vibrations in their spider webs. But she is unique in that her spider web, because she's sitting on top of our internet cord, can also connect to the human internet. So she is a much more worldly spider than your average spider, because she can access the World Wide Web in addition to the spider wide web. And she shares that information with her friends on the farm. And so then she introduces us to her friends that are in other parts of the farm. And she basically just goes through a year in the life on the farm. And my premise in the book is that farm life starts in the spring. So the book starts in March and goes through the following February. And, it talks about different things. Charlie focuses mostly on the chickens and about, sort of our saga of raising our flock, our first year raising the flock. And also Charlie didn't know anything about chickens before before her shed became a chicken coop. So she's kind of learning too. So the books are designed to be educational, but hopefully in a fun and engaging way. So you're not just focused on the learning, but like I said, the stuff that happens in the books is all based on stuff that really happened. So it's educational in that way too. And then, she talks to her friend, Sally, the garden spider. And then the second book then is Sally is narrating, and you're still hearing from all of the spiders like every month. And obviously they stick to their themes for the most part, that Charlie always talks about the chickens and Sally mostly talks about the garden, and Roberta is the kitchen spider. And so she talks about what's going on in the kitchen and what she hears from the humans and those kinds of things. And then Beatrice talks about the barn. And they talk about the animals. They don't talk to the animals. So it's not like the spiders can talk directly to the chickens. Okay. She's just observing the chickens and telling us about what the chickens are doing. In fact, she's very clear on the fact that were she to ever meet a chicken sort of face to face, the chicken would immediately eat her. And so she's very careful to stay in the top of the coop away from the chickens, because she loves the chickens and she's very interested in them, but she understands that chickens love to eat bugs and would immediately eat her if they had the chance. Yeah. So there's that kind of like, it's the animals are still animals. The animals are not anthropomorphized, but the spiders are. Sure. So, and then, like I said, the second book is Sally, and Sally loves the seasonal variation. So she talks about how she's a little bit more of a spiritual woo-woo kind of character. And so she's talking about how the vibrations change and the seasons change and all the different things change. And she has a long period of downtime where she's in the wintertime, she's just like hibernating under the mulch in the garden. Each of the spiders is a type of spider that actually exists in Wisconsin. So like they're sort of realistically could be in these different parts of the farm. Some of them are spiders that do like overwinter and would potentially live for multiple years, but some of them are not and probably are only like 1 year spiders. I don't go into that detail in the book. It's just assumed that they're sort of the same characters from year to year, even though some of them probably wouldn't survive over the winter. But Sally, at any rate, is a spider who is just going through all those different piece of the year.
Sure. And then there's the third book, right?
Yeah. So the most recent book that just came out in March is Roberta the Kitchen Spider. And so she lives in the kitchen. She talks about, in her book, she narrates recipes, basically. So she's obsessed with human cooking. She understands that spiders don't cook, but spiders can smell. And so she loves to hear about cooking. She is originally from Brazil. because my husband is actually from Brazil. And so she's originally from Brazil. She stowed away in a suitcase and came from Brazil. And so she speaks a little bit of Portuguese in the book, and she has some different cooking traditions, or, you know, culinary like things that she brings in. And she talks about the difference between what she saw, you know, in Brazil and here in the US. And then she also, in her book, so in the third book, she actually provides a recipe for every month. So there's like 12 recipes throughout the book that are stuff that we actually make. Most of it is intentionally things that are, you know, made with stuff that we grow on the farm. Not exclusively, but like they kind of match up with sort of what's available during that month, and that we actually, you know, grow on our farm. And so she spends a lot of time talking about how she's like excited about, you know, something that is going to start being in season, you know, soon or whatever, that she can finally make this recipe that she hasn't seen, or she can't make it, but she can watch the humans make the recipe that she likes that she enjoys. And it's kind of focusing on the sort of seasonal eating aspect, that obviously you don't have to eat seasonally, but you can, and that in our farm, at least, we try to do that to some degree, at least. Certain things, you know, my kids will ask for me to buy, you know, strawberries from the store in, you know, December or something. I'm like, I mean, I'm not really going to do that, because they're not going to taste any good, right? Like they're going to be kind of cardboardy around here at that time of year. And so I just, you know, was kind of, you know, talking to them about, we grow strawberries, like they're available in June. They're pretty much only available in June. But they are, you know, much better then, and yet you can freeze them, right? And we'll save the like frozen ones. But we're not going to buy, you know, like the ones at the store
Not worth
in
it.
December, because they're not even going to taste good. So those kinds of things are wrapped into that book as well. And then she also talks a lot about our house cat. That's her animal that she talks about, since she can't really see any of the other animals from inside of the farmhouse. But he's now passed away, but at the time we had an older house cat that she enjoys telling stories about how he goes around during different parts of the year.
Some people are afraid of spiders. I don't fear spiders. I think they're cool, but why spiders?
So Charlie actually talks about this a little at the beginning of the first book. And for me, spiders are a beneficial insect, right? Because they eat the bugs that want to actually bite me. Whereas spiders, I mean, not that a spider won't bite you if they feel, you know, threatened or cornered or whatever, but they don't have any interest really in biting humans, right? Like we're not on their meal plan. They don't need, you know, blood meals like a mosquito or tick or something like that. So it's like, really, if I'm going to have a bug in my house or in my, you know, in my sphere, I'd much rather have a spider who is just interested in catching the other bugs.
That's right.
than having any interaction with me, really. And so you know, Charlie talks about how she doesn't really understand why people don't like spiders, right? How they think that they're like creepy, or like, you know, like there's something sinister or something about how they just like sit in their web and like wait for, you know, their prey to come. And then of course they have all the legs, which people, you know, pretty much any animal that has more than like 2 legs, people right? People like things that look like us. Spiders don't look like us. And so they're a little bit like, you know, creepy looking or whatever. And so she just says, I don't get it, right? She's just like, I don't get it. Like I'm helping, you know, I'm helping keep the chickens safe by killing, you know, or eating bugs that would otherwise, you know, bother the chickens. And Beatrice, the barn spider, talks a lot about how her mission in life is to just eat all the biting flies in the world, because they're just like constantly bothering the animals that she likes. And, you know, there's a million of them. And so her goal in life is to just, you know, eat all the biting flies. And then Sally eats, you know, the bugs that will attack the plants. Sally is obsessed with tomatoes, not because she likes them. She tried one once and she thought it was gross, but she's obsessed with them because when they smash on the ground, they attract tons of bugs. So she loves tomato season because, you know, she's serving a purpose of getting rid of the bugs that are getting rid of the food waste.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of connected. But yeah, so I mean, I understand that there are quite a few people who are like, "Ooh, spiders." And even some of my friends that have read my books are not a fan of spiders outside of it. But the spiders are, obviously fictional characters, and they speak like humans and whatever. So like they don't dwell on all of the spiderness of them too much, although they do talk about their webs and some of those things. But I don't think it would be too disconcerting for people who are just not fans of spiders.
Sure.
So
You've already taught your kids about just practical day-to-day life, living on the farm. They're seeing what's going on. How do they react to the book that their mother is now an author? What do they think of that?
Mostly they get excited whenever I mention the small humans, because the spiders refer to us as the large humans and the small humans. And so whenever they refer to the small humans, they get excited because they know that that's them. And then, yeah, it was pretty funny when my oldest was reading through it herself. She kept coming up to me and being like, this story is in the book. And I'm like, yeah, I wrote the book. I know all of the stories that are in the book because I wrote them into the, like it was just, I mean, she understood that I wrote the book, but like at the same time, she was so excited and she was like trying to share it with someone that, one of her favorite stories or whatever was in the book. And it was just kind of funny because it's like she wasn't processing that, like, I know everything that's in the book because I wrote every word that's in it. It's just like,
Right.
she's not used to knowing the author. So, so it was funny for me to just
That's great.
be, seeing her enjoying it.
That's nice.
But yeah, no, they enjoy it. They have taken copies of the book to their schools, donated it to their school libraries. Like they've had it in their, their classroom for the older ones where the kids can actually read. And I did actually go talk to my son's class because they were doing a, section on like authors and being an author, and they were writing their own little short chapter books. They were like, couple of pages per chapter kind of little books, but just the idea of like crafting the story and like all that stuff. And so I went in and I did a session with them on how I sort of mind map the book, how you plan out the story, like the things that you need to have in place before you start writing, so you can have the story kind of flow. And this book is a little different because it doesn't have as much of a story arc in terms of a main character that's like kind of moving through. It has a narrator that's talking about what's going on. But so we talked about, like they were mostly writing stories about themselves, right? Their books were mostly, I don't know if the teacher told them to do that or if they just all chose to write about themselves, but they, it was like they were fictional, right? So it was like they were on a, alien planet exploring or what, like that's what we talked about, how they have to have something happen, like having it, an event that happens and then you describe it and then there's, some sort of, challenge or something that you overcome. And then there's some sort of resolution, all those kinds of things. So that was fun to be kind of an author and go in and talk about that. And so I still occasionally see some of the kids from my son's class around town and they're like, oh, you're the lady there with the spider books.
Yeah. That's really great. We're living in a very interesting age where just regular people write books and they're good and they influence the people around them in a positive way. As far as sales go, outside of your own sphere, have you experienced people buying your books and enjoying it who don't live in Wisconsin?
Yeah. So I mean, I've done some, book promotions and things. So free book promotions and Amazon ads and all that kind of stuff. And so I mean, in total of all of the books, all three that are now out, also like 700-ish books. But some proportion of those, probably a large proportion of the first book at least, was free downloads of the ebook during one of the promotional periods. But yeah, no, definitely had people who just sort of came off of the internet or whatever, or browsing Amazon or wherever, and purchased it. And that's happening. So the first book came out like 4th of July weekend of last year. So it hasn't been out for all that long, the series. So I'm trying to kind of get the first 4, which is one book narrated by each of the 4 main spiders, trying to get the fourth book out this summer. So then I kind of have like, the little box set with like the one from each spider, and then I can work on, more focused promotions with it now. Once I have it, I'm trying to just get it all that out into the world. And then kind of focus on that. But I've been running Amazon ads, and so people, are just buying from seeing it, sponsored on their Amazon site or whatever. I have some reviews, and some of the reviews are people that were kind of on my launch team, from that I, through various ways. I was in a book publishing class that, people would, cross promote each other's books and stuff. So I have some readers there, but I did get a few where I was just like, I don't know this person. Like, I have no idea why that, like where this person came from, which was exciting.
Children's books do quite well. A children's book with a talking spider, bound to sell, right?
Yeah, well, pretty much everyone I talk to about the concept thinks it's interesting, at least, or like they would be interested in possibly reading it. I guess the thing about children's books is that, there's a lot of those genres of, romance or sci-fi or whatever that do really, really well with ebooks, because people will just, sort of binge read the whole series or whatever. And for children's books, a lot of people want to buy like the paperback copy, because it's just kind of, if they're reading it to their kid, even for books that aren't necessarily picture books, obviously picture books, they usually will buy the hard copy, but like for children's chapter books, because the kids want to carry them around, they want to take them to school, they want to put them in their backpack, whatever. So it's just, there's a little bit more of a barrier there that people aren't going to necessarily buy, because they were a little more expensive that way, and they have to pay shipping, and they come and wait X number of days. So it's a little, you don't have the like same sort of binge reading sort of scenario. But I have definitely had people who just, at this point, now that there's 3 books out, have just bought the whole series, right? They just bought all 3 books. And people have more kids that have tablets and things where they can read an e-reader, on their tablet or whatever it is also, I think. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how the children's book industry grows and changes as people get more used to reading things online and those kinds of things. So
beautiful. You say you're writing a 4th book. Do you think there's going to be a 5th? And is this going to be a series?
So it's a series, I guess. What I'm grappling with in terms of the 5th book is, so it's based on a year in the life of our farm, and we started at the point where, there are still additional years after the 4th book that I could write about, although at some point I'll kind of catch up, but then I'll have to kind of slow down in how fast I'm putting the books out if I want to continue to have it all be based on things that have happened so far. But the 4th book would be sort of 2020-ish time frame in real time. But my dilemma, I guess, is when I get to the 5th book, do I just start over with the first spider narrating another book? And I could, or do I want to, branch out into some other kind of narrator? I've thought about having other animals on our farm potentially narrate. We have a dog that's outside and sees lots of things. We have, barn cats and people, that are around. But the problem with that is that sort of the premise of the book is that the spiders can connect to the internet and talk to each other, whereas the dogs and the cats, first of all, in the rest of the books, they don't talk, and they're not really connected to the spider wide web or any of the spiders or anything. So what I understand from, the theory of writing books is, once you make your rules, people don't really like it if you break your own rules. So I'm trying to decide if I want to bend my rules or if I want to come up with a different premise. My husband thinks that I should just write a more character-based book that's more like about, life on our farm, but, having the dog be the main character, but he's talking to you. It's not, similar to the structure of the spider books. So I'm still kind of figuring all that out.
This has been a lot of fun. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed yourself, Sarah.
Yeah.
It's been a trip. Yeah, really good.
Yep, it's been fun.
I don't get to interview too many authors who've written children's books. And I think that's wonderful. I think what you're doing is really good. And I
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best in the future. And if you ever write anything else, please look me up and we can have another go at this. It's really good.
Sure.
All
Okay.
right. Well, I need to take care of yourself now.
Thank
Bye bye. And that's our show for today. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that bell for future notifications. And if you are a self-published author, I would really like to speak with you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.